Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Eva and today I'm going to talk about the ego on the path of spiritual awakening. The ego is part of the human system and it's just there. So that's just how it is. And basically from a younger age on, so at first it's not specifically in the forefront, but from a very young age on, we start identifying with it. So the ego is our survival mode. And it wants us to survive. This is its purpose. So not die. This is like the main purpose on the ego on the core level. So it actually has a very positive purpose, right? It wants to keep us alive and look after us. And from a very young age on, we start feeding it. We start feeding it with the identification. So we basically think we are that. And I see it as being an energy structure in the center of our chest. This is where I see it energetically. And basically, throughout our life, we just feed this energy structure. So it starts with a young age, and then all our lives, we just feed it, we feed it, we feed it. This energy structure gets bigger and stronger. And then eventually, we just fully identified with the ego from a certain age on, and this is all we know of what we are. And I mean, we all know how the ego works, right? It defends us against people, situations. So even if somebody just says something, a little criticism to us, like this defensive mechanism, I want to survive, even comes up from the ego. So it's not, so the survival structure or the survival mechanism goes from, okay, I don't want to physically die, to also like, if I have a fight, I want to be right. If I have an argument with somebody, I want to be right. I want to be right. So this is also just the ego acting out the survival mode. It's just a different level of intensity, but in the end, it's always survival mode. So it wants to control outcomes. It wants to have its way. Like, we want to have certain outcomes of life experiences. If we work towards something, we want that it exactly happens how we want to have it and so on. So it's all just the ego, because the beingness, what we really are, so the beingness level, so it's a level that's more in the background. So the pure beingness, there's where all the intelligence is. This is more like allowing life to flow and how life is just unfolding. This is basically how we are on the core level. So we just allow life and we want to have just life experience how it is. And the ego has basically its own agenda, its own way of how things need to unfold, how I want to be seen, how I see myself, that I'm important, that I'm an important person, that I'm special, that I'm better than others, I compare myself, and so on. So this is all the ego structure, basically. So we feed the ego all through all our lifetimes. And when we're on the path of spiritual awakening, we know, we've heard of it, the ego needs to die, or needs to, basically what it does, it steps into the background, it steps into the position where it's supposed to be. So it's there. So when we have a human structure, it's there, but just not in the forefront. So by doing spiritual practices, we start, so meditation, for example, long, deeper meditations, we start withdrawing energy from the ego and also start basically giving energy to what we really are. So we start distinguishing. This is basically what's happening. And this can happen very quickly. So in an instant, in a shift, so that suddenly we do a practice, or it's just the time that the ego is being dissolved. So the ego structure, or it's a gradual process. So how I experienced it, just to share, I experienced it being in the center of my chest. And when I had my unity consciousness shift, it got pulled out of my chest. So this is how it felt like. And I had a hole for a few days. It was empty. I had a hole in my chest. So energetically, there was a hole, because before there was like the ego structure. So it was just ripped out. So it happened in an instant. I mean, when it happened, it didn't feel totally amazing because it's a total change in experience. Something you identified with, it's all gone. You know, it's like, oh my God, it's like, what's happening? But it took a few days until this empty, this empty space filled itself up again. So it just fills itself up with light or a higher truth. And basically what's happening is the energy was just withdrawn from the ego completely and stepped into the background. And of course, it was basically moaning from the background and didn't enjoy that experience and thought, oh my God, I wanted to have, you know, when I have this unity shift, I want to have a beautiful life experience. I just want to have bliss and feel connected to the divine, and all my problems are gone and all of that. So this is what the ego wanted. This is why I was on the path of spiritual awakening or doing this kind of work. But it didn't work out that way. So I could still feel it working from the background, but it didn't have this energy anymore. So it wasn't like in the forefront, and the full identification with it wasn't there anymore. So it took kind of some time to get used to it. And also what's happening is we have a lot of ego feeding patterns. So what I said before, the structures just got fed throughout our lifetimes, right? And these mechanisms are still there. So of course, the ego, which is not there anymore, it's in the background, but this structure, so the energies that goes to this structure, that's feeding this structure, identification is still there, but it starts breaking down over time because there is nothing to feed anymore. So either you just, it's obvious to you, okay, that's an ego structure, doesn't make any sense to feed it anymore, or it just falls away by itself, and it's a process and it takes some time. So it takes months or years to fall away. You know, for some people it's a lot faster, depending if you've done already some work on that level before. And if it's more like a sudden shift, let's say it like that, there's still, let's say, more structures in place, but they just fall down over time. And does it feel like dying? Because this is something I was afraid of. Of course, I didn't want to feel like dying. Who wants that? It, to me, or for me, it did for a few days. I just felt like I'm alive. So my body's alive, I'm alive, but I felt like I was dying, and it's just a feeling. So there is no like actual pain in the body or anything, you know, it's just something you're so used to falls away, you know, you're so identified with, you're so used to, it's just the center of your life experience, and then it falls away, and this falling away just feels like it. But again, it only was there for a few days. And then it felt fine or normal again. So yeah, but it doesn't have to feel like that. Like I said, for some people, it's a gradual process. So the ego, the energy that's feeding the ego, just gets withdrawn by the spiritual practice that you're doing, or it's just how your system functions, how it's unfolding for you, the awakening process. And then you don't even have that experience. For me, it was just the unfolding of the progress was quite fast. So this I didn't do a lot of work on that level before. So this is why I kind of felt that way. But, you know, today I'm just looking back and I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'm totally happy that it is how it is. I would never like ever wanted to have back in the forefront. And now it's basically, it's somewhere in the background, like it's not being fed with any energies. I don't know, like I hardly ever notice, or I don't really notice that it's there. So you could say it's gone. So I guess this is why people say it dies and then it's gone for good, because there is no experience of it, or hardly ever, or it's like so tiny that it's just not really noticeable. But in the end, it's the survival mode, and it's just part of the human system. So it means well. Yeah, so that's basically it. yeah, that's basically it, what I want to share. If you have any more questions, as usual, please let me know. And there's actually a meditation I just recorded. This is why this topic came up, and it's going to be out on Wednesday, and it will help. So I will create the experience of withdrawing your ego. So I pull it into the background, I withdraw that energy, what I was talking about. So it's getting fed all the time. I'm kind of withdrawing that energy that it's getting fed. I kind of make it a bit smaller energetically, if that makes sense. And then I pull it into the background so that you and your system is already getting an experience of that. And then the system gets used to it. Then it's basically not a big deal if it happens like in a shift, in in an instant, because then you already know how it feels and the system knows how it feels like. So yeah. Okay, so that's the video. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Again, if you have any questions or if you want to share anything about the ego or your experience with it, please do. I'm also happy to answer comments, if you have individual questions, personal questions. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for watching and see you for the next video. Bye bye.